Most people believe that healing makes them good. They imagine it as a process that polishes away their flaws until only light remains, a gentle, serene version of themselves untouched by chaos. But true transformation, as Machiavelli would say, is never born from comfort. Healing is not the art of feeling better. It is the discipline of becoming dangerous with precision. The weak seek peace to escape their pain. The strong seek understanding to command it. When you begin to truly see yourself without flattery or self-pity, you do not find relief. You find exposure. Every illusion you once relied upon begins to crumble. The fantasy of constant happiness, like the fantasy of pure virtue, collapses under the weight of reality. Healing, in its truest form, is the death of innocence. It does not silence the chaos within you. It teaches you how to rule it. To be healed is not to become softer, but more strategic. It is to understand that darkness, when denied, turns against you, but when mastered, it serves you. Just as a ruler must learn to control both the loyal and the treacherous within his court, a healed mind learns to control both the light and the shadow within the self. The person who integrates their shadow does not chase purity. They pursue wholeness. The masses chase fantasies of inner peace because fantasy is safe. But those who seek real power, psychological or political, know that peace without strength is fragility in disguise. Light blinds as easily as darkness. Healing, then, is not about escaping your demons. It is about learning to make them serve your ambition instead of sabotage it. The one who learns this has ceased to chase comfort and begun to build dominion. In every man there exists a kingdom divided. The self he shows the world, and the self he hides from it. The unhealed man suppresses his darkness, exiling it like a traitor in his court. He pretends that by denying his impulses, he becomes virtuous. But what he truly becomes is weak, ruled by the very forces he refuses to name. The healed man, however, understands the necessity of power in all its forms. He does not bury his darkness. He negotiates with it. To integrate the shadow is to end the civil war within the psyche. It is to recognize that cruelty, pride, ambition, and desire are not evils to be erased, but instruments to be sharpened. The one who integrates learns the discipline of owning every instinct, not indulging all of them, but understanding their function. A ruler who denies his assassins is a fool. A ruler who commands them becomes untouchable. Psychological maturity begins when a person stops blaming others for their own unrest. The suppressor projects their chaos outward, turning the world into an endless parade of enemies. The integrated individual reverses this movement. They draw their accusations inward and confront the tyrant within. By owning their darkness, they rob it of its power to rule them unconsciously. This is the turning point between illusion and mastery. Most people want to appear healed. Few are willing to be transformed. Real healing is not about light conquering dark. It is about leadership within the self, where both forces learn to serve a single command. Only then do the 7 transformations of true power begin to reveal themselves. Sign 1, the end of projection. The unhealed mind is a restless court, forever searching for enemies to blame. It cannot bear to see its own corruption, so it crowns others as villains to carry the guilt it refuses to claim. Every insult, every act of betrayal it imagines in others is a reflection of the war within. This is projection, the coward's politics of the soul. It is easier to condemn another than to rule oneself. But the healed, or rather the awakened strategist, understands that the world is a mirror polished by pain. When others provoke you, they reveal not their treachery, but your ungoverned impulses. You stop asking, what is wrong with them? And begin to ask, what part of me are they showing? This is not weakness. It is the beginning of sovereignty. A ruler cannot govern a realm he does not understand, and no man can master his life until he masters his own reactions. To end projection is to end delusion. You begin to see clearly what belongs to you and what belongs to others. Your judgments become fewer, your observations sharper. You stop needing to invent monsters to justify your discomfort. The chaos of other people no longer dictates your peace. You discern between genuine threat and internal unrest, between the enemy at your gates and the enemy in your heart. And in that moment, you become psychologically safe, not because the world is harmless, but because you no longer mistake your reflection for your opponent. The one who has achieved this sees with unclouded vision. He no longer wages war on shadows. He commands them. Sign 2, selective empathy. The unhealed empath is like an open city, unguarded, undefended, welcoming every traveler and thief alike. They confuse absorption with understanding, believing that to feel everyone's pain is the same as to love wisely. But such endless compassion is not virtue. It is vulnerability disguised as sainthood. A ruler who lets every voice speak in his court cannot hear his own command. So too, the unhealed soul loses itself beneath the weight of others' emotions. When you begin to heal, empathy transforms from a wound into a weapon. You still feel deeply, but you no longer surrender to what you feel. You learn that empathy without discretion is submission. The healed empath does not drown in others. They study them. They listen not to dissolve into the pain, but to map it. Their sensitivity becomes intelligence, a strategic awareness of human motive and emotion. This evolution terrifies those who once fed on your softness. They call you cold because they can no longer use your warmth without permission. They mistake your boundaries for arrogance, your silence for indifference. But boundaries are not walls. They are fortifications, the architecture of self-respect. You are not rejecting the world. You are simply ruling your own borders. Empathy, when mastered, becomes one of the most formidable forms of power. It allows you to anticipate weakness, sense deceit, and move with precision through emotional terrain that others stumble through blindly. You no longer sacrifice yourself to understand others. You use understanding to protect yourself. The healed empath, like the wise ruler, knows this truth. Compassion without command is chaos. Sign 3, balanced perception. Those gifted with deep perception often suffer under its weight. To see too much is to live surrounded by invisible noise, every gesture revealing motive, every silence hinting at betrayal. The unhealed mind turns this gift into torment, dissecting every interaction until life itself feels like an endless analysis. It is the curse of the over-observant, the inability to stop seeing, but the wise learn restraint. The Machiavellian mind understands that perception is not meant to devour reality, only to navigate it. The healed individual does not dull their vision. They discipline it. They no longer force depth where simplicity would suffice. Like a ruler who knows when to listen and when to act, they use their perception as strategy, not obsession. To hold perception lightly is to regain freedom. You see through the masks people wear, but you are no longer compelled to tear them off. You recognize patterns, yet resist the need to name them. You can engage in the game of surface without betraying your depth. True mastery is not in exposing everything you perceive, but in choosing what to reveal and when. This balance transforms perception from burden into art. It allows you to stand among the world's illusions while remaining untouched by them. The unhealed observer becomes an exile, but the integrated one becomes a diplomat, fluent in both truth and appearance. That is the difference between insight that isolates and wisdom that governs. Sign 4, immunity to gaslighting. The unhealed mind is easily conquered, not by armies, but by suggestion. It doubts its own perception and bends beneath the weight of others' certainty. One accusation, one confident distortion, and the fragile ego begins to question its reality. This is the psyche without sovereignty, a kingdom ruled by foreign voices. When you depend on others to confirm what you see, you surrender your crown without realizing it. But the integrated mind no longer negotiates with delusion. It stands firm in its own perception, not out of arrogance but authority. To own your consciousness is to refuse manipulation at its root. When others project their shadows onto you, calling you cruel when you're merely firm, deceitful when you're direct, you no longer scramble to defend yourself. You recognize the play, not the truth. You see the projection, not the person. This is psychological sovereignty, the ability to trust your awareness even when the world insists you are wrong. It is the ruler's calm in the face of rebellion, the strategist's stillness amid deception. The healed individual becomes psychologically untouchable, not because they are closed off, but because they are grounded in what they know. No flattery can seduce them, and no accusation can shake them. Those who have reached this stage move through manipulation like a blade through mist. They no longer waste energy proving their innocence or defending their perception. They see clearly, respond strategically, and withdraw when clarity is wasted. In a world where distortion is power, the one who cannot be gaslit holds a rare and dangerous advantage. They are immune to illusion. Sign 5, ending the repetition. Compulsion. The unhealed soul lives under the tyranny of its own past. It marches in circles, mistaking repetition for fate. Every betrayal, every collapse, every heartbreak arrives wearing a different face but bearing the same signature, the echo of an old wound reenacted. Such a person does not live. They orbit their own history. They believe life conspires against them, when in truth, it merely mirrors the patterns they refuse to see. To become conscious is to end the cycle. Awareness breaks the loop, not by erasing pain, but by illuminating the choice within it. The self-aware individual no longer seeks new actors for the same tragedy. They recognize the moment when the pattern calls, and instead of answering, they pause. That pause is power, the moment where instinct yields to intention, where reaction becomes rule. The eternal victim blames the cruelty of fortune. The awakened ruler studies their own strategy. Freedom is not granted by circumstance, but earned through perception. When you see your own hand in the game, you stop playing blindly. You understand that suffering repeated is suffering unexamined. True liberation, then, is not escape from conflict, but command over it. The healed person still meets challenges, still faces deceit and disappointment, but they no longer mistake them for destiny. They choose their response as a sovereign would choose their alliances, consciously, strategically, without illusion. That is the quiet revolution of awareness. It frees you from the compulsion to repeat, allowing you to create rather than react. Sign 6, tolerance for ambiguity. The unhealed mind is addicted to certainty. It clings to absolute answers the way a frightened ruler clings to false advisors, desperate for control in a world that refuses to obey. When possessed by an archetype, the righteous savior, the victim, the avenger, a person becomes blind to contradiction. They divide the world into heroes and enemies, saints and traitors, light and dark. Certainty feels powerful because it silences doubt, but it also silences intelligence. Machiavelli would call this the most dangerous form of ignorance, the inability to see nuance. The integrated mind, however, learns to rule in the gray. It holds tension the way a strategist holds a drawn bow, steady, deliberate, patient. Such a mind does not rush to resolve paradox. It studies it. It knows that truth often hides inside contradiction, and wisdom lives where opposites meet. To tolerate ambiguity is not to be indecisive. It is to be powerful enough to wait until reality reveals its full shape. The immature demand clarity because they cannot bear uncertainty. The mature understand that uncertainty is where vision grows. The healed mind can see both virtue and vice in the same person, both cruelty and compassion in the same act. It accepts that humanity, like politics, is never pure. This tolerance is a sign of true psychological command. It means you no longer need the comfort of being right. You seek the advantage of being aware. You stop chasing moral simplicity and begin practicing strategic complexity. The one who can hold paradox without breaking it holds a power rarer than certainty itself, the power to see the world as it is, not as they wish it to be. Sign 7, natural boundaries. before integration, boundaries are born of desperation, an emotional barricade built only after the walls have already been breached. The unhealed person swings between surrender and explosion. They either absorb the world's demands until they collapse or erupt in fury when the burden becomes unbearable. This is not strength, it is reactivity. It is the struggle of someone still at war with their own authority. True boundaries emerge only when the inner conflict ends. When anger, selfishness, and assertiveness are no longer exiled as flaws, but recognized as loyal soldiers of self-respect, control returns to the throne. Anger becomes discernment. Selfishness becomes preservation. Assertiveness becomes clarity. You do not need to shout to be heard. Your presence carries the weight of decision. To the unhealed, this balance appears cold or detached, but it is, in fact, mastery. Boundaries drawn from self-knowledge are neither rebellion nor defense. They are governance. They say, "This is the extent of my kingdom, and here is where your influence ends." The healed individual enforces limits without guilt because they no longer confuse rejection with cruelty or self-protection with pride. In this stage, strength no longer looks like resistance. It looks like ease. You do not justify your limits. You embody them. You do not need to prove your worth through compliance or confrontation. Your actions quietly reveal your command. This is balanced authority, the state in which a person becomes both firm and fluid, capable of mercy without martyrdom, of power without domination. Integration does not soften a person, it sharpens them. The unhealed imagine peace as passivity, but those who have done the true inner work know that peace is precision. Wholeness is not a retreat from the battlefield of the psyche, it is mastery over it. To integrate the shadow is to forge the sword of consciousness from the raw iron of contradiction. It is to become both the ruler and the army within your own mind. When every disowned part of you has been reclaimed, you cease to move through life reactively. You act with intention, not impulse. You no longer fight your darkness, you wield it. Your compassion becomes selective, your perception surgical, your power deliberate. You learn to use fear as focus, anger as signal, pain as intelligence. This is not purity, it is sovereignty. The Machiavellian truth is that control begins within. The one who has mastered the self cannot be easily ruled by others. They are no longer seeking approval, rescue, or validation, because they have seen every side of themselves and made peace with it. The healed mind commands both light and shadow, choosing consciously which to employ. It can be gentle without weakness and fierce without cruelty, capable of both mercy and precision. This is the final evolution Jung described, the individual who becomes whole. Not perfect, not pure, whole. Healing, stripped of its illusions, is not the erasure of your darkness, but your conscious union with it. When you can move through the world with both the light of awareness and the shadow of instinct, you have achieved psychological nobility. You are no longer merely surviving your mind. You are commanding it. And that, in both philosophy and power, is the mark of the true warrior of wholeness.